audio was off. Now it's on. So, I guess we're live. Alright, let's get painting. What in the world are we doing? That's a great question. Only one way to find out. Nothing to it, but to do it. We are just setting up a little bit of noise right now. Okay, and I'm going to set this at like sure, 13%. Sounds wonderful. Hide that. Hide the other background. Why don't we do another fill? We'll set our darker tone here. Something like that. We'll add a mask. And we're just going to start painting our shadows on this mask. We're going to have to invert it. Let me get in close here. And we will flip this mask and begin. Let's go with a harder brush that will, this might be interesting. Coarse hair. Been a while since I've used this one. Okay. All right. Okay. There's a place in Litchwood State Park. This is a park that I live relatively near to, where there's like a trail that really comes to this kind of knife edge, and then it drops down. There's a gorge down below with the Genesee River going through it, and there's a bunch of waterfalls there. The waterfalls and the gorge are really the main attraction, but there's this path you can find. You can find this this area where it just kind of comes to this ridge. It's interesting. Is that what we're painting? I don't know. Don't know. We use a smudge brush here to soften all this out. So our primary brushes are going to leave a whole bunch of texture, and then our smudge, I mean, we can get some texture with this smudge, but our aim will be to soften up bunch of edges. A whole bunch of them. Bunches and bunches of edges. We're gonna soften it all up. We'll make this pretty small in there. I think that would be the appropriate thing to do. Alright, maybe we'll feather this in, get some textures going on here. So we're really just dealing with shadow right now, that's the big idea. But we are starting to imply some with the use of implied lines, leading lines, the kind of the texture of the grass here. So if we've got this coming in horizontally, and then we've got this diagonal thing coming in here, those will contrast each other. And it should make those diagonals feel a little bit, I hate to use such a loose term as rich, make them feel richer, but they, when they stand alone, they don't come off nearly as interesting as when they're in contrast to a linear line. So then their diagonal nature is contrasted by something else, which makes them feel more dynamic. In theory, at least. We'll see if that theory pays off for us. cut that off so that it's on the other side of the hill there. Maybe we do the opposite. So if we've got like maybe these are like little fence posts or something, right? And maybe on this other side we have another fence here, right? But maybe we have the shadow and then the light getting caught on that side. I don't know that we need these. I'm kind of using these lines to show the flow where I want things to go, but I just actually don't think that they're that necessary. But that's kind of the big picture of what I'm thinking here. You get this kind of winding S-curve road here. And then thinking we have this like a building, just a tiny little silhouette with a fire. So there's some distress going on back there. Bringing that drama. Darks that I'm putting in there, that's debatable. I actually kind of like it being kind of fading back to almost nothing. So see about turning these more into maybe tire track type looking things, and just lines to lead the eye around. Though I think ultimately it would benefit us more to have them be just a graphic shape maybe in there. Alright, zoom out. I'm kind of working around this image, really closely. And now we're gonna, I think I'm bringing some sky elements here that'll start to frame it. And I think it will also give a sense of more drama, I think, to have these have this kind of dark sky coming in. Start to shape these shadow shapes here. Hopefully we don't get too crazy with that, you know, too on the nose with trying to make the terrain have these very clear, distinguishable forms. But I'm thinking basically these soft shadows, so we're going to have hard and soft shadows here. Soft shadows being from these clouds up above, and then your hard shadows being from your surface stuff on the plants on the ground and that sort of thing. And so we should see these kind of hard and soft edges coming in and out. Now, whether or not we can easily pull that off, there may be a lot that needs to get refinagled here. I know we're undoing some of the things that we had talked about earlier, but kind of have to let these things go and just take the painting where it wants to go, if that makes sense. You know, it just occurred to me, you know, I was thinking, we set up that, this color bounce layer here to kind of give us some color jitter, but what I hadn't done was started to work on a blank layer rather than a fill layer. So because I'm working on a fill, nothing's really going to adjust that color. So let's do a new layer, and we'll do sample all, and we'll just start working from there. Oh, okay, there, see? We're getting that fill now. So I'm going to adjust this to just 1%. And we'll see how that starts to shift now that it's actually doing anything. So that's just going to give us a little bit of jitter. That's the idea. But in a controlled direction. I think we'll start to flatten this out since it's the base of the cloud here, and we're getting lower to the horizon. I want to be careful that I'm not making this too kind of flat and pointed at the end. You know, so like normally I'll take a cloud and I'll kind of break the ends up, have it kind of break off into these little pieces, you know. But I don't know that that would necessarily be associated with like a storm front coming in, you know. Like typically you have a much kind of stronger edge to this cloud. You know, so it's more like this, what would you call it? Like the high pressure, low pressure, where they meet, you would see this, you would see the effects of that in a very clear, delineated way, rather than these really kind of soft, gentle transitions. So it, you know, maybe I am just asserting some things or throwing some ideas in that are just pure conjecture, but it seems to me that that would imply kind of more force and more strength, you know, if it's more of this mass that's coming in and there's a clearer delineation, you know, there's more energy going on there rather than kind of dispersing it through a you know, into kind of these disintegrated forms, if that makes sense. What is this guy talking about? Sorry. If that makes sense, great. If that doesn't make sense, just know you're not alone. At some point, it would behoove us to define our horizon. I think our horizon basically is right here, but I have not been acting as if it is for the clouds, so I need to be careful with that. Being sloppy. Carefree. That's naughty. We're supposed to care about these things and think about these things, right? You know, your light source, the horizon line, all these things that, you know, once you've got them set, you can render to your heart's content. But you know, I don't always like being locked in at the onset. You know, I like to work the canvas, play around and see what it could be before I say, you know, absolutely this is the plan. And there does come a point where you kind of get locked in. But I think it's a good thing to not be too afraid to tear it apart, see what else it could be. I think that's the worst for me, is when I'm fixated on something. You know, it's got to be lit this way or whatever. And certainly there are good there are kind of good things that can come out of that. You know, if you give yourself rules to follow, and you just follow those to the end, usually just the process of painting, for me, in my opinion, just the process gives you enough time and focus to consider the technique that you're playing with. You know, so if that's you know, like a rule, I know I've said these before, but like if you say trees have knees, that was one that I heard there. You know, kind of rhymey, and think, okay, well, how do I translate that visually? Trees have knees, that all the limbs have these kind of a soft inner curve and then a knobby outer curve. And you could probably do some really terrible trees with that at first, but if you give that enough time and you just follow that rule, you're going to come up with some cool stuff, I'm sure. So yeah, so if you're just playing with light and shadow, or you know, thin and thick lines and that sort of thing, like whatever it is that you're geeking out about at the time, if you keep playing with it, eventually you'll just spend enough time with it to discover something, discover something about it that you find delightful, and you'll, I think, bring that out into your work. So that, I guess, would be my caveat too. It's okay to have some rules. Okay to have direction. That's not a bad thing. You don't want to be completely blue skies, open field, and go wherever you want, and find out that you never made it anywhere, just because you couldn't keep going in one direction long enough. But I do think the exploration is important. Listen to this guy. Philosophize himself into circles. End up right at the place where he started. I may end up moving all of that down. Smooth all this out. And we've got this this smoke here. I think we could have that. You know, once it hits the, gets high enough, it hits the wind. Gets carried over. So smooth out. Okay, I should probably start looking at this whole image and saying, okay, what's what? I think we can kind of simplify these and merge them together. I think I want to bring this down really close to the horizon, and then on the horizon I'll show this shadow from the cloud and then have just a sliver of light from the sky peeking through. Sounds like a plan, and just like I said before, those best laid plans, you may find out they were terrible plans and you just have to chuck them. But we'll see. We shall see. Chuck them. I love it when those strange idioms come through your speech. Like, what am I doing? It just sounds so weird when it comes out of your mouth, but whatever. Chuck 'em. Maybe erase this out here. Chuck 'em. All right. Let's do a lighter tone. See, I wanted to start this painting with a very limited value range. Excuse me. Again, one of those silly rules you set for yourself. Then you ask yourself why, and you have no answer. But I say that to say that I want to be careful about introducing more value into this. I do want this this shape, and I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to have the road be this brighter, you know, crushed stone or something, you know. Or maybe we, I don't know, I wouldn't actually lay down flagstones because I think that would be, well, it might be kind of cool to look at, but it would be insane to have ever made a flagstone road this long. Okay, but anyway, that being said, we'll see what the shape does. We may need to, well, we will have to consider at some point what's more important to us. You know, having this road have this bright graphic read to it, or do we want the house in the background to be to have that read? You know, so are we subtly suggesting to follow the road by virtue of the shape rather than the value, right? Or do we throw something right at the end? Maybe the only little pop of color would be on the end there, and that would imply, well, that would draw the eye in to go over there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a new layer. We will pin that to the layer below it and add a yeah, one of those, a gradient. And let's see, we'll set this to normal. So what we're doing here, you know, this is an overlay, so it's still going to pick up some of that light that we have underneath it. We're adding this gradient to soften it as it goes towards the horizon. And if we actually go darker, then we're actually darkening all that with the overlay. Okay, because we're just changing the value that's in that layer. Okay, whatever. Guess we'll go with that. And then I'm going to start working in, I think, just the faintest color by this building here. I don't really like the shape of that road, but we'll get around to it. So I'm thinking just this slight pinkish color here, right? Maybe even less, more subdued than that. And then let's blend it in. Maybe even less than that, you know, like really close, snug up to the house there. still got that color. I don't want that. I want to do... I think I want to take this value and let's do, I guess, gradient. Maybe we'll set this to darken or darker color, something like that. We'll bring it back. Maybe we need to put this behind that layer so we still get what we were working with before. So I guess this is the question whether we want to lose the horizon or define it. And we don't even have to have the sky. I mean, having the sky dark, you know, obviously is a theme, but that doesn't mean that it's literally going to be darker than the ground. So let's do this again. We'll flip this guy over. There you go. And then we're going to go down there. Actually, you know what? Never mind. You're fired. Do a new layer. And we'll feed this one up. And I think we can do... How do we want to do this? So this one could be... kind of like that. Multiply. Do linear burn. And we'll bring the fill down. Now, actually, this might be worth mentioning. Notice the difference between using the fill and using the opacity. See? See, you got these splotches here, right? Where the way the linear burn calculates the color difference there. So it sends some of this to black, and then some of it just doesn't have the same effect. It just kind of changes the... I mean, it darkens it a little bit, but it changes the hue and the saturation. So if we lower the opacity, it's just the entire layer is just has less of an effect. But if you lower the fill, it's going to shift where that fall off is. So something to think about. All right, I'm going to do a new layer. I think what I'll do is we'll set this horizon like so. That's going to be our mask, and then we're going to select all that, delete it, and then we'll bring in. We're going to invert that mask. So now we brought in this. This gradient from the horizon. I like the subtlety of that. I also liked what was going on with that this vivid light. I like how it's shifting the color as you get farther away. Not that it has to. Wouldn't necessarily make sense, but I just like it. Okay, and then I want to do as I had mentioned before, where we bring in just this sliver of light across here. So I'm going to grab that kind of pink tone there. I'm going to slide it more over. It's going to be a little lighter, but less saturated. And I'm going to go more towards yellow, maybe even a greenish yellow. Greenish yellow. This guy losing his mind. Okay, so put that in on the horizon. Just gonna I'm thinking of this really as our base sky color in the background. Okay. So wherever you would peek through the clouds and just see sky, this is the color. And we do want it to be a cruddy day, so we're only going to have a little bit of it. Now let's mask this out. We'll go back in and we'll mask out around our house here. Or building, structure, whatever this is. And I think maybe some of these will have these peak above the horizon here. And we might have to manually go in and push some of those a little bit. Push them. That's rude. Okay. It's like dead center horizon. Actually, don't mind it that much. I think the okay, let me go below. There we go. That's a little bit more. I think the dead center horizon does give it this certain kind of melancholy thing that I don't mind so much. Though the focal point is, I mean, this is like dead center, focal point, dead center horizon. What are you doing? Whatever. I do think it needs another element as far as storytelling goes, right? So we've got this drab landscape. You got a building that there's a smoke rising out of it, and there's a road that leads up to it. So I think we could start to implement some more things that might explain, or rather lead the mind to fill in the story. So, you know, a broken down tractor or something on the side of the road, abandoned equipment. I don't think I would do a tornado, but you know, a tornado would be another element. You might kind of think about this in the scene. So I think, not that we just want to add a bunch of junk, but it's the elements that are descriptors that give enough information to understand kind of where are we and what's going on and who's in that building, who should we be concerned about. And I think it starts to become more. You start to relate those parts together rather than just see it as, okay, there's a building, you know, an object, or a, you know, there's an object over there. I know I'm supposed to care, but I don't. you actually have to give enough direction, I think, for that to be the case. This here, we may bring that color up even higher now that we've increased the value of the sky and on the horizon. Push that a little bit closer. And then we'll blend them together. Deciding whether we want rain to be an element in this. That would be the implication of these kind of fading diagonals in the background there. Oh, really? If you say so, Eric. Well, I did. I said it. Now I gotta do it. That's too much. Too much. Let's take some of this. I mean, we're probably going to push all this value back anyway. but I want the building back here to correlate to things happening on the ground here. I do like the sky, but I want this to be, I think graphically it would make sense to that the smoke is where that delineation breaks the horizon. Delineation breaks the horizon. What is this guy talking about? Alright, and then I think we need to carry this right on through back here, because we're correlating these shapes that really shouldn't be. You know, this should be a background shape that kind of gets lost. You know, should break across this and not follow with it. I say should. You know, there's nothing that really necessarily should, ought to do, you know, whatever, but if we want those to read as separate items in space, then there's something we're going to have to do about that, right? So that is what I mean by what we should do there. Get those things to separate from each other. Okay, I'm going to do a new layer and start blending some of this back here. Isn't getting away with too much back there. Nobody's calling you out for being too contrasty in the background. Not even a focal point. Drawing all this attention to yourself. Time to have a conversation about that. I do want these to be kind of separate planes. I want to be careful that I'm not describing form on the landscape that breaks the illusion of space. Like right here, this is a pretty, let me zoom in on that. It's a pretty dense kind of shape there, and it's on a place in the horizon where really that should either fade away or it should be clear that this whole thing is in shadow, right? So I either take this whole region and make it all like that, or we start cutting into it to kind of get these sharper, thinner shapes that would be more what we would see on the horizon. Or near the horizon, rather. It's not quite on the horizon. Okay, it's probably time to address this road shape. Just checking out the chat from Roberto. Hello there, awesome channel and paintings and very informative videos. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, thanks, Roberto. Appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I guess I have nothing to say other than, we do the painting every week, Wednesday night, and there's really no goal other than to just paint something that I'm not obligated to paint. It's not for work. It's not like I feel like I've got to learn something or anything like that. It's just to keep it fresh and exploratory and interesting to me. And as selfish as that may sound, and as strange as a premise for a like a YouTube night, you know, it's like I'm just gonna paint whatever I feel like and not really think about it. It's been fun. It's been fun, and it's been you know, there's some definitely mixed results in terms of some nights are much more kind of traditional, and some nights are more that kind of sci-fi concept art, and then others are just weird quirkiness. But I can't say that I have any real disappointment over the results. You know, like there isn't really any night where I'm just like, oh man, that was just torture. I never should have started doing this. You know, I don't really feel that. So yeah, these have been. I guess I'm saying these have been as therapeutic for me as they are hopefully helpful to those watching. And I know I say this like basically every time, but I really feel like the best way, you know, if you're watching for entertainment's sake, then, you know, by all means just watch. But you know, as one artist to another, if you're watching to learn and grow, then I would definitely recommend, you know, get a sketchbook out, or some reference, and paint your own thing as well, you know, because we're kind of in this for the long haul. When I do one of these, it's just I'm just going to keep painting until something emerges. And I find for myself when I'm watching YouTube videos and stuff, you know, you have these little aha moments, or like, oh, that's a neat technique, maybe I'll try that. And it's like, it's always so much better when you just do it right away, in my opinion. That being said, you know, last week I think I had mentioned doing working on some kind of training material, and you know, I want to make sure that wouldn't be, or a course type thing. I want to make sure that it wouldn't be something that's just the same as everything else, you know, just adding to the noise, if that makes sense. And I've given that some thought, and I can't say that I'm not in education, you know, so I don't really know. But I have been learning some things recently with homeschooling our kids. You know, just really starting to consider, like, well, what is the way that I think would be an optimal way to learn? Not just the material, but like also just the way to absorb it, the way to approach it. And my wife mentioned this idea called the Charlotte Mason approach, and I don't know if anyone has any opinions on that. If you've heard of it, I wouldn't mind hearing anyone's experiences with it or not. But basically, it has these kind of steps. I mean, there's a whole lot to it. My understanding was that it was kind of a attempt at a educational reform, I believe in the UK, and this was not very recent, it was a little while ago, but one of the big things I think is interesting is just this approach of like, I'll do something first and you watch, and then I do it and you help, and then you do it and I help, and then you do it and I watch, right? So kind of just slowly handing off this responsibility. And I think with painting, that would make sense in terms of the design decisions that you're making. If you just watch somebody paint, you'll see, okay, it doesn't seem, it's not insurmountable how they got from a blank canvas to a really cool image. And in a lot of ways, it's really inspiring when you watch people work, and it's empowering, right? You feel like, oh, I think I could do that. Like I watched them go from nothing to something, right? And then you actually try it, and it's kind of hard, right? So I think having those steps of like the next step would be, okay, now we're going to do another painting, but this time, in a live format. We're going to kind of present the crossroads of what our options are. If we're trying to explain, say we're trying to describe space, distance on the canvas or whatever. You can kind of lay out some options, and then have the class or your student decide which course of action you're going to try to solve that problem. And then in that second stage, they're making more of the decisions, and you're coaching them through it. But you're also kind of the one tasked with making that decision work. And so you're still talking through, like, okay, well, if you want to show space with atmospheric perspective, and we're not going to do as much, or I guess you don't necessarily have to say using option A and not option B, but you say, okay, well, if you've chosen to use option A, then this is how I would go about it, and this is how I would try to make that work, right? Now, the next step then would be to be hands-off and let them drive, let them do the painting, and you're there to assist with some of those decisions, as you hit these crossroads where you have to decide, how are we going to solve this design problem? Then you could offer the suggestions, or rather, by you I mean the instructor would offer the suggestions, and the student is tasked with executing on it. So anyway, these aren't, I don't think these are particularly novel. Like any one of those steps is like, yeah, I had an experience like that in art school or whatever. But I think to put it all together in those steps, those logical steps of like, you watched me do it, and then I did it, and you helped me make decisions about what we were going to do, but I was tasked with actually executing it, and I showed you how I would execute on those decisions. And then you did it, and I helped you think through some of those decisions, but you had to execute on it. And then finally, you just do it, and I observe. And my experience with art school was more the latter there with the observation. And actually, I really enjoyed that. I thought my instructor was great. But it was much more based on, okay, I'm seeing what you've done, and this is how I'm interpreting it. And we just kind of talk through, what were you aiming for? What were you trying to accomplish? And whether or not that was successful. So I think often you skip those middle steps there. So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting method of teaching. It's really more designed for children, but I don't think we're really any different at our different stages. I don't think it's demeaning to actually show someone how to do something before you throw them into it. Anyway, I probably just went on and on about something that, in education they might highlight that for about 3 seconds and then move on. But I thought that would be kind of a neat format to work. And as far as the actual like course material and all that sort of thing, obviously, I think that would take me a little while to really develop. But I have laid out a matrix for myself of the different things that I've learned and want to improve on, and obviously there's going to be areas that you don't know what you don't know, but I think in terms of drawing, and actually maybe in life in general, there are more things that you ought to do and have not actually put the time in to do it than there are things that you simply don't know. I mean, there are things you simply don't know, but there are plenty of things that you're not acting on. At least that's how I feel about my experience. So I put together that matrix a while ago for myself to say, okay, about these things, or you've dabbled in them, you've touched on cloth and anatomy and all that kind of stuff, but let's put it down here as a touchstone, or like a place you must return to every now and then to see whether or not you're actually growing in that area. Okay, I have rambled on. Back to the chat. Donna says, "Yo, Eric, painting's looking awesome. Thanks." Roberto says, "I saw you started this painting straight away. Any specific reference you got inspired from, or how do you tackle the blank canvas?" So yes, there were two things that I was thinking about. I started watching Stranger Things. A friend of mine introduced me to it, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but he thought I'd like it, and he was right. It's a pretty cool show. As far as the mystery and all that kind of stuff, but I like the part where one of the characters goes into this. They call it the Upside Down. It's like this other world. It's the same world, but it's kind of the dark version of it, right? And there was something really interesting about the way that they handled that. It's very simplistic, graphic. Just a black scene with the character, and then a reflection. And so I kind of was thinking I'd like to play with scenes that are less high contrast and colorful, but more subdued. And then for a reference, I pulled up this reference sheet that I had for a project, kind of like a post-apocalyptic type of thing. And I didn't want to go with this really busy thing. I liked just the simplicity of this. It doesn't look like we ever break on this image here. I mean, it gets pretty bright up there, but I think if you're just looking at this down here, then we might get to black, and we might get to like 2/3 above middle gray, but 2/3 to white. We never quite get to the full value range. And so this is kind of what you would call not necessarily low key, but it's getting pretty close. And so I like how this is very subdued. There's really nice, subtle value transitions, but it's not full spectrum. And so this, I just looked at this before I started, and then had in mind, that kind of like that barren world, or simplistic kind of theme. And so maybe those things kind of subtly, or not so subtly, influence where I was headed with this. And then, as far as tackling the blank canvas, just start, I think I know it's really, sounds kind of lame to put it so bluntly, but I find that it's so much easier to respond to what I'm seeing than it is to construct a plan from nothing and then start executing on that. I know some artists will work that way. Excuse me. And that's legitimate. If you've structured it out, I'm going to do this kind of a scene, and so for example, I talked about the horizon line and the focal point being dead center, and all that kind of being basically no-nos. At least in the kind of work that I do generally, that's not very dynamic to do it that way. But if you were to plan that out and say, you know, I want this, I want to be, I don't know, a scene with lots of sky, so it feels really open, and you know, we're kind of, maybe we've got a character who's a hero character or whatever, so you want to position the camera lower so you're looking up at him, so that that character feels more stronger and imposing or whatever. Like you can construct your composition. You could think through it and kind of write all those things down and say, okay, I'm going to have a low horizon. I'm going to have a character. You know, the character's going to be, we're going to do like a David and Goliath kind of thing. The character's going to be smaller. You know, we'll still have him in kind of the hero pose, but we're going to have this giant enemy or whatever. You know, so graphically, I know that hero's got to be, you know, not take as much space on the canvas as the boss enemy that he's got to fight or whatever. You know, whatever it is, whatever your theme is, you could make all of those decisions ahead of time. I don't tend to do that unless it's like a client job where you know, you have a brief and you know you've got to hit those points, and so you ask yourself, well, what conventions would help me hit those points of like how the audience would respond to it. But when I'm just painting just for the sake of painting, the blank canvas, well, I guess even in professional work as well, it's like I find that if I just start drawing, you know, draw some circles or just throw some shapes down, and then I respond to that and I go, well, okay, don't really like the way that circle is just so linear, you know, let's make it more interesting. So you start cutting shapes into it or whatever, and then you decide how you're going to use that or not use it. But it's so much easier to have something thrown at you and say no than it is to figure out exactly what you're supposed to be doing, if that makes sense. I feel like coming out of my mouth, it doesn't sound all that helpful, but that certainly is the way that it seems to work for me. That if I can put something down and either be inspired by it in some way, you know, not that it has to be like this, like I said, inspirational moment or anything like that. It's just like, do I like that? You know, yes or no, and then I'm gonna just keep hacking away at it until it changes into something that that starts to feel like the feeling that I'm going for. I know that all sounds very intuitive. You know, I took a class this summer with Marshall Vandriff, and he was talking about composition. Composition was the point of the class, but this was one of the areas that he spent some time on, and that is how much. I don't remember the exact terms that he used, but how much thoughtful, controlled approach you take to the painting versus intuition. And you know, we may lean more towards one or the other as artists, but generally speaking, you need both, and you need to kind of get into these different frames of mind, kind of go back and forth between, you know, I've constructed this knowing that it is supposed to be correct, but what do I actually feel about it? And if I feel like just erasing half of it and throwing something else in there to see what happens, you're not necessarily wrong when you know, if you've controlled a painting and then that controlled composition doesn't work, like your intuition tells you it doesn't work, your intuition is probably not wrong. So anyway, I generally start with intuition, then I start to get more controlled and think, okay, well, how do I like fix this to make it believable or right, and then return to intuition at the last stage, because it doesn't matter how technically correct or whether you did what your art teacher 10 years ago would have told you to do. That none of that matters. It matters, what your impression of the final work on the canvas is, and that's intuition. So, sorry if that's it's all abstract and wishy-washy, but that's how I see it. I'm gonna come back to the chat and see. Yes, saw a couple other messages there. I agree with Eric that you don't start from nothing, but start with what you have to guide you. Yeah, hopefully that was more helpful than it was a mad rant. This is the thing, talking about doing a course or teaching or whatever. I understand that there's a huge difference between doing something and knowing how you would approach it, and then actually being able to communicate that to someone else. I more and more have respect for those who can explain something to someone well enough that they would then be able to act on it, and certainly if they could become a professional in that field, that's impressive. Whether you think that whether you liked that approach or whether you fall in love with that person's own work is kind of irrelevant if what they can do for you is show you the path, and but what I'm saying is that door swings both ways. That what I feel like I know, I might not actually know. It might be in that, like I said, in that intuition world where I don't know if I can explain that. But anyway, I do think it's worth trying, and I think it would be cool to try to put a little course together. If nothing else, people have asked for some guidance, and so it would be nice to kind of have something maybe a little more official, and then also understanding that that growth is necessary. That at some point, I'm going to have to test my own ideas, and I don't see any real harm in passing along what I think I know to other people. Anyway, I don't have to make a case for it. I don't think. Though I may need to be kept accountable to keep moving on it if I keep talking about this, but there's no movement. Shame on me. Okay, let me zoom out and see what we've got here. I did like what we had before, and we could also do, like I was saying, with the brain words. I have like some broken down farm equipment or whatever, that might be interesting. Though I'm saying that, but that's not really what I'm thinking about getting to quite yet. I'm thinking we add some puddles. As lame as that sounds, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Makes sense. I liked what was going on there with the... actually, why don't we take the sky color and we'll start blocking in some little puddles here. And I think I should be careful that I don't go too crazy, get too much. So we'll erase some of that out. And do we want this to echo the road? You know, so we've got, the road has this S curve, but it actually kind of goes twice, which may be, you know, a little bit overkill. But do we want the puddles to kind of lead the eye as well? Where are you taking me with these little blots of light here? Again, just playing. See what we get. What's the worst that could happen? We have to paint it back out. That's no good. Then of course we can lock that layer and then paint over it. We can take our other shadow or cloud color, whatever. Paint that in here so that it's not all super bright like that. No, we'll leave that. That probably is too bright. Just bring it down just a little bit. I think we could do with some overlay. That's always a thing we like to do. So we'll go below middle gray, above middle gray. We're just swapping between those colors if we want to lighten or darken any part of the scene here. Don't know if I like that being. That's like too. That's too much. I like it being kind of subtly shifting towards that. This horizon here. Okay, so over here I introduced this shadow, thinking that we could have it describe this form, you know, come up and over the road, because we kind of got the road as like a, it's raised up, you know, we talked about that a little bit. Right, so the shadow comes over, across, and then jumps up here, down on the road, and then back over here again. And so this would be like maybe another, looks, I mean, we kind of played with this being like another berm over here, but I don't think I ever stated that. And let's see. Sky, we haven't done anything with that in a while. I think we'll fade that out from the, you know, kind of have these peaks of dark and then kind of have it spread out. Grade away, rather, not spread out. Diffuse, if you will. I think this could use some really simple lighting. Simple, brighter light in here, so I'll go with a new overlay layer. I'm going to move, we'll move this more towards, you know, I'm tempted to go into this like yellow-green area. And then we just bring it across the road here, I think, and down. I don't know if this is a good decision or not to lighten up that horizon. I'm going to say we'll leave it dark, except maybe in here. I don't really want that. I don't want that shape to be so heavy. Okay, now I need to actually explain what I'm talking about here. So right here, you know, this shape right here can feel like it's just one mass. Okay, so I want that to feel like it's breaking up into these smaller planes as it goes off towards the horizon. And then here, I think what we could do, we might be able to break some of that up. I'm going to go to the smudge brush here and just try to get a sharper edge on some of that and then blend out some of the other edges. This is the tricky part when you're using the overlay, you know, with like a soft brush, is that you don't really have these like clear delineations of space like these other objects here. So let me do this. I'll go to the smudge brush and I'll do sample all layers, and then if we just grab this and like pull it down and grab these and pull them up, you know, and now we're showing, okay, this is like a this is a region where there's, you know, these vertical objects, right, that are lit or in shadow, and they are in front of each other. Nothing complicated there, but if you're just kind of airbrushing in that light, then you're not going to get that effect, because it'll just handle everything the same. I mean, the overlay layers are pretty good in that, you know, it can tend to increase the contrast, so it would push colors or values away from each other. But if you don't already have that like framework of you know, one shape in front of the other, it's not going to get you there. So at this point, I can take some of these edges and push them up, right, to try to get that effect, or try to get that background and push it down. So like here, you know, maybe we try to smooth all this out, and then we push a couple of these up so that it's obscuring it. Might make this thinner here. And have it open up, get wider as it comes across this form here. Excuse me. We never did do that farm equipment, did we? I've got a brush for this. Let's go to Foliage. Do these scraggly trees here. We'll do this on a new layer just in case we don't like it. Lighter color, really any brush will do, and I'm just going to lighten that up as we get farther back into space. It almost becomes too, like I know this horizon line is it's nice and straight, but that is not back there. I kind of want to just blend these together right here. Lose that horizon line. Or at least lose the sky there. And then I think we could merge them together so that they just kind of lose it all together. accidentally bumped my VR headset, so that turned itself on. I don't think that did anything to the stream, but it definitely messed up what I was looking at on this other monitor over here. Okay, so do we want to bump up that color? Again, I want to be subtle with this. I don't want to be, see, that is not subtle. But, okay, I don't like the orange. I want to go with more of a pinkish hue. Okay, then we're going to fade that away. To be racing away from it. And we may not even keep this. Just playing. Though I did have the idea that it would be cool to keep this very subtle, which obviously we're breaking that right now. So may just return to what we started with. Let's go towards kind of this green, blue-green here. That's a little too intense. I'm going to bring that in as a complement to the pink-red. Very technical in my color terminology. Pink-red. Bring in like a faded John Deere green here. Alright. So, the difference between those two things. And if we just go kind of halfway there. Maybe a little more. We're gonna have just a little bit of color in our lives. Still think that might be too much, but it may actually just be the coverage and not necessarily the value. So I'm gonna start erasing away with a mask here. I don't want that color to really bleed, right? I want it to be this kind of pop of its own. You know, so if we just took this value and just painted it in directly, and then let's see, maybe we could drop the value a little bit there and here, and then the rest of it, actually we could even hide that that layer that we made below there. We use that as a base to get this color blocked in. I still don't quite like where it's headed. I want to shift it to get almost like salmon. Why though? Why, Eric? I can't explain it. It just is what it is. Okay, so I suppose we could add a few things to this scene. Add our burnt out farm equipment down here. I don't know if you've ever done this, but once in my life I rolled a tractor. And that was an unpleasant experience. I was working with a friend of mine. We were planting trees. A little spruce, blue spruce tree farm. Almost called it a grove. You wouldn't call it a grove. So I helped him out sometimes on that farm. We were planting these little saplings. So you had this basically like a plow hitched to the back of a tractor with a wheel, like two wheels that would clamp together, and it would grab the sapling, like you would hand feed it, and then that wheel would spin and drop the sapling into the groove where the plow had just plowed, and then there were like two wheels behind that would close it back up. So we planted rows of these saplings that way, and we were on a hillside doing this thing, and there were all these holes in the terrain from where they had dug up the mature trees, and we hit one of those holes. I was on the back, so I wasn't driving. I was running the little plow planter thing, and yeah, anyway, hit one of those holes, and we had been doing this all day. It was like pushing maybe 7 o'clock or so at that point at night, and you know, by doing it all day, I mean we were used to what that felt like when you hit one of those holes, and it just kind of rocked a little bit. But this time we didn't rock back up. It just kept rolling, and we both fell off. I was on the back, so I would have fallen like this. Woo! He fell like this, and our heads actually hit. And then the roll bar came down, and I'm just glad that didn't roll on either of us. Anyway, so that's my fun story about the one time I rolled a tractor. Technically, I didn't roll it. I wasn't driving. I was a passenger on a rolled tractor. It's not quite a plane crash, but we'll take it. Okay. I guess I had originally thought of having this thing like down here. I don't know why I started painting it here. I just did. I actually kind of envision it larger, right? Because you got the road is that big, so it'd be like down, crashed on the side of the road here. Let's we'll just adjust this. Nope. We need curves. I'm going to split those values, make my brights a little brighter and my darks a little darker. And then I can erase away at it. if you've got your own tractor rolling stories, go ahead and tell them in the chat. Okay, Eric, when you're done with that story, I got a better one. That's quite the mess. I should probably pull some reference and, do a better job of this, but maybe we'll get around to that. Maybe. I never decided what kind of tractor that was. It's just a mess of, it's a tractor wheel, a roll bar, and a mess. That's what we've got right there. Maybe we'll put some lights on it. Okay. Now, kind of want to obscure some of this, but like give it this shape language that tells you that it is machinery or something that has been decaying there for a while, but you know, man-made, generally speaking. Not generally speaking, definitely speaking. Definitely man-made. Who gave this guy a microphone? Okay, so I think what I'm seeing here, what did I want to add? Maybe some birds or something? I don't think I have a bird brush. Everyone's got a bird brush except for me. I feel left out. So what can we do? We just need something that makes a mess, really. I think if we do wild brushes, and I got this dragon brush. I just call it the dragon brush. I don't know why. I just felt like it would be a good brush for drawing dragons, if ever I wanted to. But what's nice about it is it has this kind of thick and thin thing going on, right? Whoa. So you can imply the different forms, at least in silhouette that way. And I'm going to use this to simplify some of these. This whole thing's got to be like, you know, the fence is now knocked over because this tractor, thanks tractor, knocked over that perfectly good fence. Now, why would there be a barbed wire fence on both sides of the road? Life is just full of these questions. Let's darken that up. Maybe even a little darker down at this area. We'll grab that value. Alright. So now, I guess we can play with the color balance, curves, hue saturation, all that good stuff. And we'll see if we pull anything else out of this that might be interesting. So we're keeping everything pretty well below that middle gray. Good job. Let's do, instead of just throwing more color balance at it, let's do a fill. We can set this to either overlay or whatever looks cool. But we can fill this with a color and we can start getting a overall effect on the scene. Something like that. I'm going to change blend mode just to see kind of what we get. So if we go soft light, then the sky value comes through a little more clearly than with the overlay. Better or worse? Yeah, I don't know that, you know, the making this darker, it's okay, but I don't want to go all the way to black with that value. And then let's do maybe a hue saturation. Decide which way we want to go with this. If we go lighter. And we'll do another one that goes towards desaturated. You know, my natural inclination is to go towards the more saturated image. Yeah, for sure. But I think we want to control it a bit more. So this one, I think I will go desaturated, but I'll also darken a little bit on this layer, and then I'm going to flip this mask, and then I'm just going to paint it in areas that I think could be kind of blended out, like or maybe here. Oops. Here we go. And I may need to go even darker with it. give that lighter color on the road, and then like the foliage and stuff around it will hit with this desaturation here. It's okay. That's the response you want to hear when you got someone painting something for you. It's okay. Not my best work. I'm going to just go a little more subtle with this. Maybe just in the blues, though? Let's see. Let's go select our blue region. There we are. Just amp that up to 11. Make sure we've got everything. And then bring it down. Still think there's a few areas that could use some love. Let's grab the whole thing here. We'll group that. That's our, whatever, adjustment group. And so we'll come back to that. But first, we will start to balance some of these values a little bit more. And we're doing this just with a luminosity layer. So we're not changing anything other than that light and dark. And I think some of these values I'll probably just bring together into one. So we'll kind of merge all that. Whoa. could be a terrible idea. Only one way to find out. Probably not the best life mantra. This could be a really bad idea. Let's find out. I think this whole region here could be thinner. Okay, then we'll re-initiate our group there. It's crazy just how much that changes it. When you turn it off and your eyes adjust to it and you bring it back in, you see just how extreme the change is. Okay, so I think I'll just make a last few changes here. I'll just grab some of these colors and try to make sure that they're in the same zone hue wise, so we're not jumping. It's the one disadvantage of working with the luminosity layer, just to get the luminosity the way you want it. If you're not coming back to the hues, then they'll have these weird kind of blends to them. They get muddy. A little bit of mud is not the end of the world, but it might not be what you're going for. I don't think I wanted that. What I did right there, I think I want this to kind of cross over and not be, I don't want it to get lost in that background cloud there. Okay. Probably a half decent place to stop. Curves. Color balance. And then maybe we do hue saturation. And bring some of this down. Hmm. Oops. Oh boy. What have I done? Okay. There's the accidental hotkey. Oh, something like that. Okay, let's stop here. We'll go full screen. Move this guy over just a little bit. What's going on here? There we go. I guess we gotta zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing there. There we go. Wonderful little dystopian world. Now, I think if I were to take this further, the next thing I'm seeing is like rim lights and that sort of thing. Really start working on the lighting and kind of pushing some areas forward. So, for example, I guess we'll do a couple since I mentioned it. And we're gonna bring some lights in here, just catching the edge of these parts, and then well, that one was, whoops. That one was unnecessary, but like up here in the clouds, for example, we'll grab that value and maybe just get a rim value. Now, if you get too crazy with this, it can get kind of cartoony looking. But you can also blend it. You block it in, and then you kind of bring it in, smooth it out in different areas. But anyway, so I think something like that would be kind of the next step. And you might catch some of these edges here. That's too bright. You might catch a couple edges in here. However, I think I gotta stop. Can't just keep going with this. Or if I do, gotta do it another day. But anyway, yeah, this was a fun kind of exploration. There were just a couple of ideas that we were throwing out there. These mid-tones, lower key image. I don't even remember all the kind of things that we had thrown out there. I had talked about Stranger Things and just liking how simple some of the scenes were, and kind of wanted to play with that a little bit. Talked about rolling a tractor and all those good memories. A little bit about story and connecting multiple elements, though there's certainly more we could go. We'd go further with that, but just the principle of having, I think maybe at least 3 things that relate. I was talking about this with a friend of mine just the other night, but there's something about there's like a dimensionality to that, right? So if you have 2 objects that are in your scene, or 2 major recognizable objects, then you have this linear relationship. The 2 things are kind of either working together or juxtaposed against each other. And then when you bring in a 3rd element, then there's kind of like a 3-dimensional kind of relationship, right? It's the barren plain, the ominous sky, the fire, and the crashed tractor. They start to you start to make connections between the different elements. So if you make a connection between the crashed tractor and the fire, or the fence is a fenced-in road, and maybe you make a connection between that and just the fact that it's this massive plain, right? So the more it's not like you just cram a bunch of stuff in there, but you can think about the potential for these elements to have a relationship with each other, and then a relationship with a 3rd element, and then it deepens the kind of connections between these things. And I think a story just kind of naturally emerges when you start doing that. Anyway, that's a whole other ball of wax, and I will say story is definitely not my it's not my strong suit. Something that I am intentionally working on and developing. But okay, I'm just going to ramble on and on if I keep talking. So I think now is probably a good time to stop. This was I think a fun project for tonight. It was good conversation in the chat, and appreciate it. So I should be back here next week, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, give or take a half an hour or so. Gotta get my kids to bed and get everything settled before I get started. And thematically, there's really nothing other than we paint. And so I would say come ready to paint. All right. Thank you for joining in, and have a good night.